Okay, we're going to talk about how to start a tower dryer using the touchscreen. So we're going to go to Start. And in this case, we're going to talk about assisted start first. It's going to remind us to remove the burner tarp. You don't want to forget the burner tarp. Hopefully the burner had been tarped in the off season. Just a little reminder and says, yeah, I've done that, I've checked that. Here's a load system safety warning that once you turn on the load system, whatever you have hooked up to the load auxiliaries could start at any point if grain settles within the dryer. At this point, it's going to want to fill itself. The dryer is full, so I can go ahead and proceed. And I think on a tower dryer, you're pretty much always going to want to just go straight to continuous flow. Okay, so now we have to select the fans and heater, and note all fans are going to start together even if it is a 3-fan dryer. Our temperature set point can go between 90 and 220 in this case. I recommend 180, 190 being your top end, just because the location of the temperature sensor in a tower dryer is down towards the bottom of the heat chamber, and up at the top, like for instance, if we set the bottom 180, it's probably going to be 220, 210, 220 up high in the dryer. So you don't, just because of the location where the temp sensor is, I would keep that 180, 190 or less. Then we'll go ahead and our desired output moisture. Usually on a tower dryer, we're going to be 15, 15.5, something like that, depending on how much aeration is going to happen. Our input moisture, we could select there. If we're looking for a starting point on how fast to run the dryer, we have 3 choices: just the previous speed the dryer was running, the calculated speed based on all the information we just told it, or my experience. I can set it to whatever number I want. If I have no idea, I want to go with the calculated speed based on all the information I just told it, and I'll hit proceed with the speed from the drawing charts. Okay, basically we're going to go ahead and hit start, so I'll hit start stabilization, and this really just brings us to our manual screen. Notice that the fans are starting. We're going to start fan 1, fan 2, fan 3. Our unload is running, so we are first starting these 1, 2, 3, 4. These are the unload auxiliaries. So we start auxiliary number 4 first, then 3, then 2, then 1, and after 1 starts, we should see the unload rotor start to move there as well. So when the rotor is moving, that gives us the indication that we are sending power to the VFD and turning the unload rotor in the dryer itself. The dryer is full. This fill switch here, now it just is showing that it's empty. That just tells us if the dryer is full or not. If it is not full, it's going to do the same thing. It's going to turn on all our auxiliaries. So number 1's closest to the dryer, 2, 3, 4. These are just dry contacts, and we don't necessarily know how they're being used on every site, but they can turn on equipment as needed. And notice our control setting is really manual at 49.2%, which the assisted start kind of showed us that's where we think we should start. And it's going to take 110 minutes to run a kernel of corn all the way through the dryer and out and stabilize or really get that dryer stable. So we recommend just running at that set speed for the amount of time it takes to get a kernel all the way through the dryer. Okay, let's just pretend we're going to fast forward in time for that to happen. So I can hit drying step info and just skip stabilization and kind of get that timer stopped. Now it's going to ask me to calibrate the sensors, and we'd recommend calibrating your discharge moisture sensor so that can be accurate. We'll hit discharge moisture here. We're going to have to wait for the next cycle. So these have a static moisture sampler on them, and we have to wait for that gate to stroke in or stroke out so that we can basically catch grain at the same time that it's holding it to sample. Okay, so now we're going to hit where we are ready to take the sample, and we need to go out there with our bucket, and basically it's telling us, hey, it's going to happen pretty soon. We should now see that the actuator, you'll see the actuator right below the moisture sensor move, and that's when you want to take the sample. And note it's going to take, it gives us about a 2-minute countdown clock to get that done. Okay, so now our time is about expired, so we should be back with our sample from the dryer, and we're going to put that in our moisture tester. And what it's asking to do here is take that one sample and test it 5 times. So I realize there's some very high quality moisture sensors out there that may not need to be tested 5 times. There's also some sensors out there that are not as accurate, and requiring to do it 5 times basically just gives us a better average of what the grain actually is. So I recommend, even with a good one, run it through a couple of times, and if it gives you the same number, then you need to fill all these out with whatever that number happened to be. And once you've got them all entered in there, we're going to hit store calibration. Okay, so note the uncalibrated was 15.7. We put a 0.5 point offset in there, and the calibrated is going to start correcting itself, and it's going to take time for that to happen, because we told it in our static sample configuration that we were going to run a 2-minute cycle and calibrate and average the last 10 minutes or 5 samples together. So at that point, our discharge moisture sensor should be calibrated, and again, over time, this is gonna start correcting itself and getting right. If we're basically happy with the grain that's coming out of the dryer, then we're gonna be able to switch to automatic. So I'm gonna push automatic and go to automatic. And now it's going to say, okay, well, how do you want to run the dryer? Do you want to run it in automatic based on output moisture or based on column temperature? And if the dryer has it, we'd highly recommend column temperature if you're going to run in automatic. And tower dryers are usually somewhere 110, 120 degrees in that ballpark of a set point. So this is probably pretty reasonable. Maybe I'd found out that 120 or 119 was really close to what I want, and the column temperature is actually very relatable to the final moisture content coming out of the dryer. So I'll hit start. So now notice we've flipped to automatic here, and our control setting now says column temperature, and 119 is the setting, and it's actually measuring 122. So it's going to compare the set point to the measurement, and it's going to increase or decrease our unload speed to keep these two numbers as close, or get them to come together as close as possible. The higher we set the column temperature, the lower the moisture will end up. Or if we need to increase the moisture coming out of the dryer, then we would decrease the column temperature. So that's an inverse relationship. A couple of things. You're going to want to look at the graphs menu often. So graphs and column temperature. And again, this is a simulator. These aren't realistic numbers. As it populates information, it will fill this all out. This window is about 2 hours. So you're going to always see a 2-hour window on these graphs. The red line is your set point. The green line is what it's actually measuring, okay? So it won't look like this, and it won't be a pretty straight line. It'll usually be a sine wave of some kind. But what we're interested in is, does the sine wave trend to be level, horizontal? If it does, then the dryer is basically stabilized. And what we're seeing here is the average temperature of the grain, and then the moisture we're looking at on the touchscreen. That's going to be some time later, say a half hour later, or whatever time it takes to get through the cooling screens, depending on how fast the dryer is running. So if it's more or less level, I know the dryer is basically stable, and the moisture that I've got, it's either going to be too high or too low or acceptable, and then we'll decide based on that whether to increase or decrease our column temp set point. If we have our sine wave increasing or decreasing, we know the dryer is really not stable yet, and we shouldn't make any real decisions until we start seeing that trend more horizontal or level line at that point. The other adjustment that I want to touch on when running with 4-point temp sensing is called a gain or a multiplier number. So to get to that, we're going to go to Settings, Unload Settings, and Reaction or Gain. So under Unload Control, Reaction or Gain, and we're running in temperature. So my personal recommendation on this is start somewhere around 100. Okay, so this is just a number that basically stands for how aggressive should the dryer make changes if it's not the column temperature we want it to be at. And if we touch that, notice we have a range up here. We can make it between 0 and 200 degrees. Most of the time, I find this number should be between 100 and 150. So if we're starting early in the season on wetter corn and the dryer's running relatively slower, then we need the reaction or the gain number to be low, or I would say start around 100. Later in the season, when the incoming grain might get down to 17–18% moisture and our unload speed increases and the dryer's running much faster, then we may decide, hey, this dryer's running faster, it needs to react faster, and that's when I might need to change the gain up to 150. So to decide if I need to change that gain or not, again, I'm going to go back and I want to look at those graphs. I want to look at that unload, the column temperature graph that we just looked at. And we're going to go to graphs, column temperature, and again, keep in mind simulator, but we'd like to see the green line crossing over, in the space of 2 hours here, we'd like to see it crossing over the red line at least a couple of times in 2 hours. If it just never seems to move, if it seems like it's stuck, and we're just not getting any progress or movement on that line, then we need to make the gain more aggressive. If it's crossing it constantly but never really calming down or bouncing below or above the line, that's an indication that our gain is too high and we need to lower it down. So anyway, that's the thing to understand, is when do we need to change the gain if we're not happy with how aggressive that it's making changes, or when do we need to change the column temperature set point, and that has to do with a roughly level line and how close the moisture is to where we want it to be. If we're level but our moisture is just off half a point, then we just need to adjust that column temp set point. And remember, higher temp is low moisture and lower temp is high moisture. So that's basically how automatic works. If you ever wanted to switch back to manual, you can do that at any point simply by touching manual, and it'll say, are you sure? And I'll say, yes, I'm sure. And we are now in manual, and we can change our unload speed manually here by typing in whatever number that we would like it to run at. Now I do have a minimum and a maximum in here, so I should describe that as well. If we go to settings and then unload settings, and it's going to show speed limits. If I just want to take those away, I can say 10 to 100%. The reason those are in there is if you want to run in automatic, you may want to limit the range that the dryer can actually operate in. If you're running in manual, then that's probably not necessary, and you want to just widen those out as much as you possibly can. So that's basically how to run or how to get a dryer up and started. There's another video that will describe the settings and tools menu, as well as graphs and everything else that you see here. One thing we'll take a look at quick is if we have a fault or something shut the dryer down, what is that gonna look like? So we'll simulate one here. Okay, if we do have a fault on the dryer, this is what the screen is going to look like. It's going to say we have a fault condition. It's going to show us what date and time that it happened and what is the issue. In this case, it says middle right column over temp number 83. Number 83 means it's wire number 83 that has the issue with it. So we're going to hit fault status here. It's really the only button that we have. And note the problem is red. And by the problem, I've got a couple icons. Here's a PDF that says column over temp fault, all of the above. So this should pull up the one page out of the manual that describes the circuits for all these over temps, where they are, and we can scroll down, see how the circuit goes, what the wire numbers are, and then there's going to be a paragraph here that describes how that circuit works as well. So this is right out of the electrical drawings in the manual, but this is the one page that that correlates to that fault. There's also going to be a video here, or video button, so we can play a video that will describe how to fix the fault. And I will say there's no sound on the video, but there is an audio jack here if you want to put in a speaker or earbuds. However, they are all closed caption videos, as you'll see here. And it's going to show us where the fault is located on the dryer and walk us through how to deal with it, how to fix it. And also just note, you can touch here, you can hit pause and go forward and backward if you need some more time to read what's on the screen, or go do what it says and then proceed. So very nice troubleshooting aspects on it. Once the fault is fixed, The red light's going to shut off, which has happened here. At that point, we can go to hit reset. Then we'll be right back at our start screen where we can go ahead and restart our dryer.